Part 32. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 312. For Wu Yu, the supernatural power of this extra-legal clone can be said to be the magical power that broke his worldview. Its miraculous power surpasses the techniques of immobilization and violence. It can only be described as incredible. Wu Yu seems to have 10 more bodies, but these bodies can be cultivated on their own. As long as Wu Yu is willing to cultivate them, they will continue to grow, but in fact they are part of Wu Yu's body. Now, the total strength of the golden elixir in these 10 clones is only slightly worse than that of Wu Yu. In other words, each of these clones has a golden elixir that is roughly equivalent to the 5th level of the ordinary golden elixir realm. The power of the elixir is even higher. After all, the quality of their golden elixir is similar to Wu Yu's. The only difference is that they don't have a physical body like Wu Yu's, and the golden elixir's indestructible body cannot be transferred to these clones. These clones possess Wu Yu's fighting mind and various Taoist techniques. They can practice according to Wu Yu's understanding of Tao. They can even refine Yuan Jindan to increase the amount of the elixir. They can also use high-grade heavenly magic to refine the golden elixir and attack. Power and execution are amazing. The only flaw is that their bodies are very fragile. Although they have very powerful attacks, as long as they are hit by the opponent, even if the opponent is not very powerful, the clone will collapse and return to Wu Yu's body, turning into a hare. He had to rest for a while and return to a stable state before he could be used by Wu Yu again. Wu Yu's physical body's resistance far exceeds that of the 5th level of the Golden Core realm, and the abilities of these clones are slightly beyond this level, but their resistance is roughly only at the level of the 3rd level of the Golden Core realm. Wu Yu feels that he should have learned some defensive skills so that these clones can be used to protect themselves from being collapsed so quickly and turned into hair again. Even so, Wu Yu was extremely surprised by this extra-legal clone technique. The most surprising thing is that this clone can improve with its own understanding of Tao. Even if their golden elixir is a fake golden elixir, as long as it can become stronger with its own strength, it is amazing. Maybe one day it will become one. A giant can dominate the world with even a hair of his own. Even each hair can be used to refine its own psychic weapon. Except for the inability to be independent in the understanding of Taoism and Taoism practice, in many cases, these 10 clones are no longer much different from real people. They are 10 unique existences that are attached to Wu Yu and are part of Wu Yu's body. For example, when Wu Yu had a thought, these 10 clones all sat cross-legged on the ground, working hard to refine the golden elixir one by one, and surrounded Wu Yu in the middle. Amazing. It's amazing. When the time comes to cultivate this magical power to the 3rd level, there will be 100 clones, and it will be even more lively. Logically speaking, these 10 initial clones will be stronger than the other clones in the future because they have also been practicing for the longest time. In fact, they are also immortal. Each of them looks almost the same as Wu Yu, even the breath is similar. In fact, this can deceive many people. For some, Wu Yu doesn't even need to go up in person. They can improve on their own, but in the case of the 1st level, it seems that their alchemy energy always has a limit, and the total is not as good as mine. If I practice to the 2nd level of magical power, this limit will increase, and each clone can even of course, it is difficult to reach this level of tempering elixirs at a normal speed, and you need to use a large amount of elixirs to smash them down. By then, he will have 10 incredibly magical hairs. Of course, even if the elixir of each hair is equal to his own, it is still far from being comparable to his own. One is the physical body, the other is the earth evil transformation technique, and the third is that its resistance is too weak. It seems that it is not easy to condense all 90 clones at the 3rd level. First, a large amount of elixirs are needed. Wu Yu is still far away from that state, but he calculated that if he is now at the 3rd level, he will have to create more. 90 clones are equivalent to possessing the 5th level of elixir in the golden elixir realm. At least 300,000 yuan of elixirs are needed. This is a terrifying number, but after all, the initial strength of each avatar is not in vain. For the 10 clones in front of him, if the Monkey King hadn't directly imprinted his magical power on Wu Yu's hair, he would have needed 30,000 yuan of golden elixir to create them. It seems that this extra legal clone is a very expensive magical power. Thinking of this, Wu Yu couldn't help but sigh. If you want to practice a religion and truly reach the sky, resources and money are the top priority. For example, if you want to raise these 10 clones and increase their elixirs as quickly as possible, you will need a lot of elixirs. And now Wu Yu only has enough Yuan Jindan for his own use. In fact, this immortal magical power is just like the body holding technique and the violence technique. Wu Yu does not fully understand its principles. The most difficult part, the Monkey King, has already been completed. From now on, Wu Yu only needs to improve on it, at least 3 times. Within the 4th level, he does not need to understand this mysterious and wonderful method thoroughly. For example, it is difficult to understand why there is a golden elixir in the clone, just like a human being. A group of people around them were refining the golden elixir in unison. The scene was really spectacular. Taking into account the fragility of their defense, 10 clones combined can probably defeat the 7th level of the Golden Core realm, but their value is far more than that. And their future is unpredictable. Now it is still the 1st level of magical power. Wu Yu calculated that if they reach the peak, they will barely be equivalent to the Dan Yuan of the 6th level of the Golden Core Great Dao realm. If he wants to improve further, unless he reaches the 6th level of the Golden Core Great Dao realm, or the magical power of this lawless clone reaches the 2nd level, then the Dan Yuan of these 10 people can catch up with his level. Counting the quality, I am afraid that there is Dan Yuan close to the 7th level of the Golden Core. Now that the Great Dao magical power has been achieved, Wu Yu can become a Huangjian level disciple. However, Shen Xingyu knows that he did not have the Great Dao magical power 3 days ago. It seems a bit fast to upgrade to the Huangjian level disciple now, and Wu Yu wants to wait for Nangang Wei for a while, so that she will not find him when he goes to the Huangjian domain. Therefore, he decided to stay and refine the golden elixir. In the process of comprehending the Great Dao magical power, Wu Yu had a much better understanding of the so-called Tao of the cultivators, and he had a deep understanding. Now is the time to quickly refine the golden elixir. At the same time, he went to the Taoist Hall and the Magical Instrument Hall and exchanged a lot of Taoist arts and magical instruments, which cost him 2,000 merits. Among them, the spiritual magical instruments were distributed to the clones for sacrifice and cultivation, and the Taoist arts were cultivated by themselves. As long as they were cultivated by themselves, the clones could easily perform them. 3 of them were life-saving methods, used to allow the clones to maintain their fragile vitality. Seeing that 10 of them had sacrificed and refined magical instruments, Wu Yu was satisfied. With magical instruments and various Taoist arts, these clones had stronger combat power. Any one of them could reach the level of being indistinguishable from the real thing when they walked out. In the following time, while Wu Yu was thinking about new Taoist arts, he used a large amount of Yuan Jindan to directly refine the golden elixir. The last time he realized the supernatural power, he had a great understanding, which made the speed of refining the golden elixir increase suddenly. Many mysterious experiences, after being integrated into the golden elixir again and again, were integrated and mastered. Even if Wu Yu used Yuan Jindan to speed up, the golden elixir could maintain a strong stability. This made Wu Yu deeply understand that his own perception, understanding of the Tao, and his spiritual will have a huge role in promoting the refinement of the golden elixir. In the process of a cross-era dialogue with the Monkey King, Wu Yu deeply realized the heaven-defying Tao in him, which also belonged to him. He deeply integrated the word defying into the golden elixir, causing the speed of refining the golden elixir to increase dramatically. Even the golden elixirs of the 10 clones were growing stronger. Wu Yu spent a total of 1000 yuan jinden on these clones, but these yuan jinden were still too small, so the effect was not very obvious. The remaining 2000 yuan jinden were all refined by himself. In the past 3 months, 3000 yuan jinden and 2000 merits were directly consumed. Wu Yu almost reached the 6th level of the Golden Elixir Dao realm, but he was short of money, so he could only stop refining with yuan jinden, slow down the speed, and then spend more time on practicing Taoism. Now he is smart and even his understanding of Taoism has increased a lot. 2 months later, Wu Yu's Golden Elixir jumped to the 6th level of the Golden Elixir Great Dao realm, and the Golden Elixir of his clones also improved a lot, but at least tens of thousands of yuan jinden were needed to reach the limit of the first level of the outer law clone. If it did not reach the limit, the strength of the clones would basically be wasted. After all, Wu Yu himself was too strong. In this way, Wu Yu did not feel the joy of reaching the 6th level of the Golden Elixir Great Dao realm, but only the depression of lack of money. Too poor. He was so poor that he did not have a yuan jinden, nor a single achievement. He found that this magical power was really a terrible waste of money. However, thinking of the millions of troops in the end, he realized that the cultivation of this magical power could not be interrupted at all. At the 6th level of the Golden Elixir Great Dao realm, Wu Yu estimated that he could barely compete with the existence of the 10th level. This was already the strength of a Xuanhuan level disciple, and even most Xuanhuan level disciples were not as good as him. Although the progress was fast, Ming Long finally found an opportunity to mock him. Haha, you are so poor. I was like that too. You are still so arrogant. Without money, don't even think about letting your clones play a role. 5 months have passed. It took 5 months to master the great power. The speed is fast, but at least it is reasonable. Wu Yu is going to the Ascension Hall to upgrade to a yellow sword level disciple. But there is still one thing he doesn't understand. Why, Nangong Wei hasn't come yet. There will be 2 more chapters updated in the evening, which will be sent out before 2200 hours. The plot will be more exciting when it starts to explode. Please look forward to it, mobile users. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 313. It has been nearly half a year, and now at least in the mortal sword domain, the news of Wu Yu's disappearance and return has been basically known to everyone, and his position as the number 1 in the 10,000 swords immortal ranking is extremely stable. Logically speaking, if Nangong Wei came out of the Shushan reincarnation cave, she should have known the news about him. Wu Yu could only speculate that she might still be in the Shushan Samsara cave. Waiting like this is not an option. When I go to Huangjianyu, she will probably be able to find out where I am. Thinking of this, Wu Yu stood up and went out. With a casual move, 10 clones jumped up and turned into golden hair, which was hidden in Wu Yu's hair. Outsiders could not tell the clues at all. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. The 6th level of the Golden Elixir, now the elixir is approaching the 8th level of the Golden Elixir realm. The terrifying effects of the indestructible body of Vajra and the great celestial arts were indeed gradually revealed, making him appear so extraordinary. After leaving Kishan Peak, Wu Yu first went to find Bailey Fi Hung, because to be upgraded to a Huangjian level disciple, he needed the leadership of the Palace Master. Bailey Fi Hung was also the Palace Master and Palace Master. He had to lead the way to the Shengxian Palace. Wu Yu, you're a rare visitor. When we found Bailey Fi Hung, he was lying on his back in a glacier, his face red from drinking. This Bailey Fi Hung is very carefree and carefree. He drinks and has fun all day long and seems to have no interest in sprinting to the Purple Mansion Kanghai realm. Master Bailey Palace, today I want to go to the Shengxian Palace to be promoted to the Huangjian level disciple. Wu Yu cupped his hands and said. Done? Haha, it seems that my task has been completed. Let me dress up for a moment and I will be ready soon. Bailey Fihung jumped up from the glacier and used several other tricks such as the water purification spell to replace. After putting on the sword robe, he turned into a handsome and elegant man in the blink of an eye. Shen Xingyu asked him to look after Wu Yu. Now that Wu Yu is going to Qingtianshu Mountain, it is obvious that he will have nothing to do with him in the future. Let's go, I'll be honored if I can take you Wu Yu to the Immortal Palace. Although he changed his clothes, his carefree demeanor did not change at all. Wu Yu smiled slightly, followed him with his sword, and headed to the Shengxian Palace. In fact, the Shengxian Palace was nearby. After all, the Duzan Sword Palace already occupied the best location in the mortal sword domain. Can't you see that not only have you learned the magical power of the Great Dao, but you have also raised your level to the 6th level of the Golden Elixir? Not bad, not bad. With your talent, it won't be long before the Yellow Sword territory will have your legend. Bailey Fihung was determined. Said. I accept your good words. Soon after, they arrived in front of the Shengxian Hall. Any disciple who has met the conditions of the Yellow Sword level and wants to go to Qingtianshu Mountain and become a true Huang Sword level disciple must first obtain the Shengxian Hall and complete the assessment test in the Shengxian Hall before he can upgrade the ordinary disciple talisman to the Yellow Sword. Only the Sword level disciple Fu can enter the Yellow Sword realm. Otherwise, if you trespass on the Yellow Sword realm, you will be expelled directly from the magic circle. There is a gap at the foot of Qingtianshu Mountain. The Shengxian Hall is at the foot of the Qingtianshu Mountain. After the Shengxian Hall, there is a passage leading to the Qingtianshu Mountain. The Shengxian Hall is composed of densely packed handleless swords. It is tall, majestic, and full of sword energy. All the disciples can't help but lower their heads. From a distance, it looks like a huge steel beast. In fact, being able to enter the Immortal Palace is an honor in itself. Standing at the door of Shengxian Palace, Wu Yu couldn't help but look to the side. In the other side of a mountain, the peak was completely surrounded by clouds and mist. A pure white wonderful palace was looming, and there were cranes and other spiritual beasts flying around. The entire mountain it seems to be full of ice and snow flowers. Obviously this is a romantic place. Why are you looking at the double Immortal Palace? Boy, do you miss spring, Bailey Fihung joked. Is this the double Immortal Palace? Wu Yu took a few more glances, and this place reminded Wu Yu of the words Nangong Wei left for him. Let's go in with me. Bailey Fihung landed on the ground, and together with Wu Yu stepped on the steps of the Shengxian Palace made of sharp swords, going up step by step, and soon its strict door appeared in front of him. The two pushed the door and went in. The interior was bright, like a small world. The walls were made of piled sword blades. The entire Shengxian Palace was filled with the strict sword energy. Even Bailey Fihung looked a little serious when he came here. In the huge Shengxian Hall, there are only people in the distance directly in front. The farthest point is a high platform. There is a person sitting behind the high platform, who should be the master of the Shengxian Hall. There are 10 small platforms below, with one person on each. These 10 he is also a deacon of the Shengxian Palace. In addition, there are several people who, like Wu Yu, are preparing to be upgraded to Huangjian level disciples after cultivating the magical power of the Great Dao. The master of Shengxian Palace is named Li Yujun. He is a selfless guy, but he will definitely not make things difficult for you, Bailey Fihung whispered. Wu Yu looked at the person at the top. He was wearing a sword robe and had short hair. He was calm and powerful. His appearance made him the overlord of the world. Why? Wu Yu asked. He roughly estimated that this Li Yujun should be an Earth Sword level disciple, and he was also in existence in the Kanghai realm of Zifu. Bailey Fihung chuckled and said, without him, this toad wants to eat Shenzingyu's swan meat. Shenzingyu treats you as his younger brother, so he will naturally love the house and be attentive to you. Sure enough, Bailey Fihung was right. When Li Yujun raised his head and saw Wu Yu, his majestic eyes suddenly became gentle. He stretched out his hand to stop the disciple who was being assessed, got down from his seat, and walked towards him in 3 or 2 steps. Wu Yu flew over with a smile on his face and said, "It turns out that you are Wu Yu, who is number 1 on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list. I had expected that you would develop magical powers and come to my Ascension Palace." "I've met Palace Master Li," Wu Yu said. "This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content." "Just call me Senior Brother Li." Li Yujun's burly body fell to the ground and he quickly exchanged greetings with Wu Yu. "Li Toad, he is here to be promoted to a Huangjian level disciple. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Why don't you quickly arrange an assessment for him?" Bailey Fihung curled his lips and asked. "You Bailey Fihung." Li Yujun was so angry that his beard trembled, but he didn't care about Bailey Fihung. It was obvious that they were already familiar with each other, and they probably had a good personal relationship. After all, they were both top figures in the mortal sword domain. "Wu Yu, although you must have mastered magical powers, you still have to take some steps in terms of form. Is that okay?" Li Yujun asked gently. He was so enthusiastic that Wu Yu felt a little embarrassed and said quickly, "Of course it's no problem. Senior Brother Li just gives me a normal test." When Wu Yu arrived, the other assessors stepped aside. In fact, they were not in a hurry. They just wanted to see what this peerless prodigy's first magical power would be. "Speaking of which, I still don't know what kind of magical powers you have developed." Wu Yu Bailey Fihung also became curious. "The condition for becoming a Huangjian level disciple is that you must demonstrate your magical powers in front of Li Yujun. Usually 10 deacons under Li Yujun will review it, but this time, Li Yujun himself was also very curious. Of course, he knew that it would be no problem for Wu Yu to become a disciple of the Huangjian level. It was even said that with Wu Yu's current strength, he would be able to quickly reach the top 100 of the Huangjian Immortal ranking when he reached the Huangjian level. "Just watch, you two." Wu Yu smiled faintly. "Okay, let me verify it." Li Yujun asked everyone to clear a lot of space. He had a hunch that Wu Yu's magical power would obviously be very powerful, and he was prepared. For a moment, everyone looked at Wu Yu nervously. Li Yujun also widened his eyes. Unexpectedly, the movement of Wu Yu's magical power was very small, so small that they were all stunned. Under the expectation of everyone, Wu Yu pulled out 3 golden hairs, stretched out his hand and blew, and the hairs rolled around a few times. After a while, they turned into 3 identical Wu Yes. They stood together with Wu Yu, and there was no difference at all. "How is that possible?" Everyone, including Li Yujun and Bailey Fihung, took a breath and looked at the 4 identical Wu Yes with wide eyes. Is this the magical power of a clone? Is it a deception, or is it a real clone? How come they are so similar and can't tell the difference? Li Yujun asked quickly. "You'll know if you try it." Wu Yu smiled slightly. He was extremely confident about this outlaw clone. "Come on, attack me." Li Yujun smiled boldly and pointed at his chest. Wu Yu was naturally not polite. Under the nervous and curious eyes of everyone, he opened the Sumuru bag, and 3 swords flew out of it. The 3 clones had already refined these 3 psychic weapons. When they held them, the psychic artifact looks no different from a real person. "Go!" Wu Yu thought in his mind, and the 3 clones took action directly. Whoosh! The 3 people rushed towards Li Yujun from 3 directions. When his elixir rolled and his sword power came up, each of them looked exactly like the Wu Yu they remembered. The Void God Killing Sword. Super Divine Sword of the Void. Sword Sea Magic. The 3 clones cast different Taoist techniques. Based on Wu Yu's swordsmanship, it was equivalent to 3 6th level Jindan Dao realms attacking Li Yujun at this moment. When the 3 swords came out, Li Yujun thought they were all illusions and hallucinations. It wasn't until the murderous intention was approaching that he suddenly felt threatened. At that moment, his whole body turned into steel, and 3 swords and Taoist techniques stabbed his body overwhelmingly, making a loud bang and pushing Li Yujun several steps. In fact, if 10 clones join forces, they should be stronger. If Wu Yu now has enough Yuan Jindan, 10 of them can fight together. Without Wu Yu taking action, they can probably compete with the 8th and 9th levels of Jindan Dao realm. After all, these 10 clones are originally one body, and their level of coordination is unmatched in the world. Miracle, Li Yujun couldn't help but exclaim after blocking a wave of attacks. In fact, he still didn't know where Wu Yu's most extreme combat power was, so when he saw that his 3 clones could force him back, he naturally felt that it was quite good. In fact, for the time being, these clones were still not as good as Wu Yu. He also wanted Wu Yu's clone to continue attacking, but Wu Yu immediately put it away at this time. He didn't want the magical power of the outlaw clone to be exposed too much. Senior brother Li, this magical power comes from the changed Taoist. With such magical power, is he qualified to become a Huangjian level disciple? Wu Yu asked. Of course, of course. It would be nice if you put it away later and let me experience it again. Li Yujun nodded repeatedly and said a little reluctantly. It can be called a miracle, and it will definitely shine in the future. Bailey Fihung nodded. At this moment, someone was applauding outside the Shengxian Palace. Mobile phone users. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 314. The applause was really harsh, and as soon as the applause arrived, a gust of fragrant wind came from behind, which naturally attracted people's attention. Wu Yu, Li Yujun, Bailey Fihung, and everyone in the Shengxian Palace turned around and looked at the gate. They saw more than a dozen very young monks walking in outside the gate. Most of them were not wearing sword robes and their bodies were gorgeous. Girls, their bodies are covered with jewelry, all of them are stunningly beautiful. A group of orioles, laughing, playing, and whispering, are eye-catching. This group of girls is different from most female sword cultivators. They love to dress up and are quite skillful. They often only apply a little makeup, but they are radiant, fully displaying their beauty. They are youthful and beautiful, making others envious. However, among this group of people, the most obvious one is the man in the middle. The young man is not tall, not as tall as the tall woman next to him. He is fair and clean, dressed like a young man, and behaves more carelessly than Bailey Fihung. The women around him were swaying with their arms around each other, teasing each other and walking in. When Wu Yu saw him, he was clapping happily. This young man with oily hair and pink face, his eyes were arrogant and arrogant. When he saw Wu Yu, he was amazed and said, "What a magical power! It's really interesting. When you are lonely, you can also transform into a few more and talk to yourself, haha. Mr. Chen is so evil. He obviously has great magical powers, but why is he so boring in your mouth? Yes, Mr. Chen, he just doesn't speak well." The other orioles and swallows nearby gathered around Mr. Chen, teasing each other. Wu Yu's behavior as a child of the royal family is rare in the monastic world. There are people like this on Shu Mountain, which makes Wu Yu feel funny. But this Mr. Chen still thinks he is proud of himself. Seeing this person, Li Yujun stepped forward, as if he did not dare to neglect, and asked, "Junior brother Chen has come to Shengxian Hall, what do you want to do?" Mr. Chen waved his hand and asked one of the beautiful girls behind him to stand up. He pointed at the woman and said, "This is my good sister. Today she will become a Huangjian level disciple. Please give her a pass." While they were talking, Bailey Fihung and Wu Yu were standing in the back, having nothing to do. Bailey Fihung introduced to Wu Yu, "This boy seems to be called Chen Fuyu. It is said that he grew up in the Xuanhuan fairyland. Da is the biological son of a Xuanhuan sword master. Don't look at him as a fool. In fact, he has been cultivated by his father and has his own talent. Although he is about 20 years older than you, he seems to be at the 9th level of the Golden Core realm. Or the 10th level. This kind of talent is considered to be at the forefront in the entire Shu Mountain. With the protection of his father, he will definitely be a big shot in Shu Mountain in the future, and he will never be messed with. Wu Yu did not underestimate him. He could roughly feel that the other party was a very powerful swordsman, but he was a bit exaggerated by nature. Just imagine, there is a Xuanhuan sword master as his father. How can a child raised in such a background be careless? Actually, those who grew up in Qingtian Xusan, especially those who grew up in Tianjian domain, or even Xusan immortal domain, are naturally superior to others. For them, any sword domain is not Xusan, so they come here and are used to looking down upon them. This is basically the case for everyone, not just Xuanhuan. Just get used to it. Don't argue with this tone. Bailey Fiheng was still very conscientious and knew that Wu Yu was young and vigorous, so he warned him. Xuanhuan is able to run rampant throughout the Qingtian Shu Mountain. People like to call him Mr. Chen. There are always beauties around him, and he walks through the city with swagger. When Bailey Fiheng reminded Wu Yu, Li Yujun was asking, "Junior brother Chen, I dare to ask your sister, what kind of magical power has she practiced? Can you show it to me a little bit?" Of course, this is definitely not his biological sister, but just one of his many female companions. Li Yujun took one look and knew that this woman had reached the 5th level of the Golden Elixir realm, but her foundation seemed a bit unstable, as if she had been cultivated here with a large amount of Yuan Jindan. At this point, Xuanhuan became a little unhappy. He said, "Supernatural power is only a matter of a few months. I have already given her a magical power. In a few months and a year, she will be one. You let her do it first, upgrading to the Huangjian level, everything else will be taken care of by me, Xuanhuan." Obviously, he was breaking the rules. Although Xuanhuan is not Li Yujun's opponent, there is no need for Li Yujun to offend a being of this status. Moreover, it is indeed not difficult to achieve great powers. What is difficult is the high level of great powers. Xuanhuan has many sisters, so he must have lost one of them casually. It is obviously not difficult to cultivate, so he did not insist too much and said directly, "That's no problem, I will give him the Huang Sword level disciple talisman to record his Huang Sword level disciple status and make it public. You, Li Yujun, are still sensible. Don't worry, I will benefit from you later." Xuanhuan smiled and held the excited girl in his arms. Li Yujun gave the woman a new disciple talisman, recorded the information, and said, "The matter has been settled. Junior brother Chen can go and relax." Xuanhuan chuckled, hugging each other, and suddenly looked over Li Yujun and saw Wu Yu, and said, "I just heard that this kid is number 1 on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list." Although the 10,000 Swords Immortal list is a silly thing, every time he is ranked first one, he seems to have some abilities. I was too anxious just now to see clearly what his magical power is. Why does it seem to be mysterious? He noticed himself again, and Wu Yu knew he was in trouble. Sure enough, Xuanhuan stared at Wu Yu and said, "Who is that?" "Yes, it's you. Come over here and let me see clearly. What is the name of the great magical power you just showed?" Wu Yu stood still. The girls next to him got anxious and said, "Hey, Master Chen is calling you. You are deaf, aren't you? Why are you so stupid? Don't you hurry up and answer Master Chen's question." This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Don't make Master Chen angry, or I will deprive you of your Xusan disciple status and throw you into the endless demon sea. It will be useless for you to cry. Xuanhuan laughed and looked at Wu Yu with his head raised. Li Yujun continued, "Brother Chen, This man is Wu Yu, my friend, don't embarrass him, he doesn't dare to show anything in front of you. How dare you? What do you care about what I, Chen Fuyu, do? What about your friend? I just want to see his magical power just now to broaden my horizons. Are you not giving me face? Chen Fuyu's face suddenly turned cold, and he scolded and interrupted Li Yujun's words. A group of women also exploded and started to curse. Oh my god, you actually dared to make Master Chen angry, don't you know you've made a big mistake? Especially you, the palace master, can you just call me junior brother Chen casually? Yeah, don't you look in the mirror, who do you think you are? You dare to call Master Chen a brother, you are so shameless. Wu Yu and Bailey Fihung looked at each other, feeling depressed, so they showed the extra-legal clone and let Chen Fuyu see it. But it must be said that Chen Fuyu is a person who knows the goods. Although it was a glimpse, he also understood the magic of this great power, so he became a little greedy. As the saying goes, when the enemy comes, the generals will stop him, and when the water comes, the earth will cover it. Chen Fuyu is just like Shenzhen Yu, so Wu Yu doesn't bother to be afraid of him. Since the other party is aggressive, he is not polite and directly said, Chen Fuyu, you can want to see my magic, but there is no such thing as asking others for nothing in the world, right? If you take out a benefit, I will show it to you. He is not stupid. The other party is strong, and it is obviously difficult to retreat today. With his personality, how could he let Chen Fuyu take advantage? Chen Fuyu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Wu Yu to say such words. He was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed and fell forward and backward. A group of beautiful women also laughed together, looking at Wu Yu as if they were looking at a fool from the countryside. Mr. Chen, it's been a long time since anyone dared to call you by your name. Yeah, this little guy still wants your favor. What favor are you going to give him? Haha, this is almost the funniest joke I've heard this year. This little guy is really, I really don't understand, the so-called number one on the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking, in the eyes of the geniuses of Qingtian Shushan, is no different from trash. Those descendants of the strong, who has nothing to do to go to the Fanjian domain to compete for the first place. They talked in a flurry, talking happily, even Chen Fuyu didn't feel angry, just funny. Come on, Grandpa will give you a little benefit, a Yuan Jindan, do you want it? Chen Fuyu threw a Yuan Jindan and threw it at Wu Yu. Whoosh! Wu Yu caught the Yuan Jindan and crushed it to pieces, with flames burning in his eyes, and said word by word, 1, of course not enough, I want 10,000. 10,000. At this time, Wu Yu didn't seem to be joking from any aspect. Bailey Fihung sighed helplessly, of course he knew that this was Wu Yu, a person who didn't make him afraid. Li Yujun was also nervous. He clearly saw the fighting spirit in Wu Yu's eyes. Chen Fuyu's smile gradually froze, his face was cold, and he asked, are you talking to me seriously? Of course, it depends on whether you, Chen Fuyu, have 10,000 Yuan Jindan. Wu Yu is too poor now. Since the other party came to him, he can't care too much. He will cheat some money first. Even if I give you 10,000, do you have the life to take it? Chen Fuyu sneered. Wu Yu did not give in at all and smiled, as long as you are not my opponent, I can take it with peace of mind. Don't you want to see my great power? Why not on the battlefield? I will let you see it clearly. This grandson of his wants to challenge your grandfather. Chen Fuyu was stunned. The loser is the grandson, do you dare? Wu Yu asked back. This time, it's a big deal. 6 chapters completed today, and more will be added tomorrow. Heaven-swallowing record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 315. To be honest, there are not many people in the Ascension Hall. But this sudden confrontation still makes people feel abrupt. Chen Fuyu is of high status and even qualified to grow up in Xuanhuan immortal domain. He is a person with extraordinary qualifications and resources. It can be said that he can walk sideways below Xuanhuan immortal domain. This is the Fanjian domain at the bottom of Xuanhuan immortal section. Someone wants to challenge him. Even, he wants to make a bet. Wu Yu suddenly became tough. Not to mention Chen Fuyu, even those women stared at him with wide eyes, full of disbelief. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. What's the matter with this young man? Could it be that he still doesn't know the identity of Mr. Chen? Oh my god, how did this fool get the first place on the 10,000 Swords Immortal list? At least they are all Huangjian disciples, so they are too lazy to ask about the Fanjian domain. Chen Fuyu lost face in front of the beauties, and was angry and even had a little murderous intent. Although he looked down on Wu Yu, the other party dared to challenge him shamelessly. Very good, you dare to talk to me like this. Then I promise you, if you can really beat me, I will give you 10,000 yuan jindan, so what? Yuan jindan, I have plenty of them. Chen Fuyu looked grim, paused, and then said, the question is, if you lose, what can you give me? What do you want? Anyway, I don't have yuan jindan. Wu Yu was not afraid of being laughed at, and said very straightforwardly. Seeing him so shameless, those women all looked disgusted. Mr. Chen, I think you should not get entangled with this fool, just beat him up directly, so as not to let others say that you bully the weak. Yes, this stupid guy is not qualified to fight with Mr. Chen, let me teach him a lesson. The huge gap in status will naturally make people feel that Chen Fuyu is bullying again. Although the beauties were advising him, Chen Fuyu didn't listen to a word. Wu Yu's provocative look made him furious, and he blurted out, then I will use 10,000 yuan jindan to buy your life. If you lose, your life will be over. Do you have the courage? Sure enough, he was ready to kill. Not everyone can provoke him, especially in front of the beauties. But this was not unexpected by Wu Yu. For Chen Fuyu, the only thing that Wu Yu had that could compare with 10,000 yuan jindan was his life. For this descendant of the Sword Saint, venting his anger was worth tens of thousands of yuan jindan. So he was not scared at all, and said, if you want my life, you can't fight here, you have to go to the battlefield of life and death. In the Xuanhuan Immortal Gate, of course, you can't kill people. The disciples' talismans are monitored at any time. The only place where there is a life and death feud and life and death is the battlefield of life and death. Of course, if you want to decide life and death there, you must have a major grudge and need to go through an audit. However, with Chen Fuyu's power, he wants to enter the battlefield of life and death, and no one can stop him. Then the battlefield of life and death. The battlefield of life and death in the Fan Sword domain is not far from here. At this point, Li Yujun and Bailey Fihung are unable to control it, which makes Bailey Fihung a little helpless, but Wu Yu is still full of confidence and said to him, don't worry, I'm short of money recently, so I'll ask this fool for some money. Are you sure? Bailey Fihung knows what Chen Fuyu is like. Wu Yu nodded. But he was still nervous. In his opinion, Wu Yu's actions this time were too impulsive and too chaotic. Helplessly, he could only quietly pass the message to Shen Xingyu before he was about to get up to go to the battlefield of life and death. However, Shen Xingyu was in the Earth Sword domain, and it would take a lot of time to get here, and it might be too late. Buzz. Chen Fuyu led a group of beautiful women, and flew to the battlefield of life and death. Those beauties repeatedly advised Chen Fuyu not to be angry and just kill the fool. Chen Fuyu had never been provoked by the disciples of Fan Jianyu before, so teaching Wu Yu a lesson was not enough to relieve his hatred. Although going to the battlefield of life and death was a bit grand and chaotic, it was the only way to kill Wu Yu to vent his anger. Wu Yu, Bailey Fihung, and Li Yujun followed behind. They were anxious, but Wu Yu was contented, forming a sharp contrast. Wu Yu, You are not a child, let alone stupid. Don't let your blood cloud your mind. Now it's not the battlefield of life and death. You still have a chance to regret. At most, let Xuanhuan beat you up. As long as it's not the battlefield of life and death, he will never dare to kill you. Li Yujun said nervously. Wealth and honor are sought in danger, I know it in my heart. Wu Yu smiled at them. To be honest, they were so nervous for their own good. The two brother-like characters were indeed rare good people. In the blink of an eye, the bloody battlefield of life and death appeared in front of him. From the sky, he could see a huge steel ring below, dotted with blood stains. Countless sword cultivators had died here in history, so there was a lot of murderous aura here, and even a large area around it was filled with a murderous aura. This was the terrifying battlefield of life and death in the fan sword domain. Qin Fengling, come out. Xuanhuan had just landed next to the battlefield of life and death, and he shouted at a palace not far away. In that palace, a group of people came out in a line, led by a female sword cultivator in a black sword robe. She looked cold, probably because she had been in this battlefield of life and death for a long time, so her eyes were stern and murderous. But when she saw Xuanhuan, Qin Fengling suddenly smiled charmingly and said, "Who am I to ask? It turns out that Mr. Chen is here. Sometimes he is not welcomed from afar, but sometimes he is not welcomed from afar." The rapid change of this demeanor is quite surprising. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. This person is in charge of the battlefield of life and death. His strength is similar to that of Bailey Fihung, and he is the 9th level of Jindan Dao realm. Xuanhuan stepped forward and said, "I have something important to ask for your help today. I want to have a life and death battle with this Wu Yu. You won't veto it and won't give me this face, right?" Wu Yu, Qin Fengling took a look and saw that it was indeed Wu Yu. She had met Wu Yu in the 10,000 Swords Fairy War, and she was interested in accepting a disciple. But after all, she was only at the Xianjian level, and Wu Yu would definitely look down on her. Seeing Xuanhuan so excited, Qin Fengling knew something was wrong. Wu Yu must have annoyed him and made Xuanhuan murderous. Wu Yu is a wizard, and he might become a Shushan sword master in the future. If he dies like this, someone will definitely hold him accountable. Then it will be my responsibility. Qin Fengling couldn't help but have a headache. She knew that Wu Yu had a certain value, and his talent was not as good as that of Wu Yu. Xuanhuan is bad, but the problem is that Xuanhuan is favored by his father, and he is a person who cannot be messed with. She felt like a huge problem was falling on her head. Under the difficult situation, she was anxious and asked Wu Yu, are you sure you want to go to the battlefield of life and death with Mr. Chen? Do you understand that as long as you go up, if you are killed, Mr. Chen will not be punished in any way? The battlefield of life and death, there is a life and death agreement. If Wu Yu doesn't want to, according to the regulations, there is nothing Xuanhuan can do, so it will be easier for her. Of course I understand. You don't have to be embarrassed. Just let me do it. I am responsible for my own affairs. Unexpectedly, Wu Yu's answer was so clean that Qin Fengling almost vomited blood. She thought to herself, he committed suicide by himself, and everyone heard it with their own ears, so I can't be blamed for this. She did not dare to offend Xuanhuan, so she said directly, at this time, since the two of you have a deep grudge and have thought about it carefully, I will not stop you and allow you to fight to the death. After that, she stepped back. What happened next was between Wu Yu and Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan glanced at Wu Yu indifferently before rushing into the vast battlefield of life and death. Wu Yu! Bailey Fihung shouted one last time, but still failed to stop Wu Yu. This made him anxious, but it was useless. No matter how anxious he was, Shen Xingyu didn't arrive so quickly. You two will wait a moment. You need to sign the life and death certificate first. Before the fight to the death, there were still certain steps to be completed, and they all waited for a quarter of an hour. After that, the two signed a life and death certificate, and recorded it in the record, telling the details of the conflict clearly, and even recorded the matter of the 10,000 yuan golden elixir. To prevent Chen Fui from cheating. Only then did Qin Fengling understand that Wu Yu was trying to save her life for Yuan Jindan. This boy is really crazy. Qin Fengling was so nervous that her heartbeat kept beating. It is estimated that people who were still in the Shengxian Palace spread the news. Disciples from several places nearby came to watch the excitement. Before the battle, hundreds of cultivators gathered here, and as time went by, more people came. Wu Yu and Chen Fui fought. This was undoubtedly something that could cause a sensation in the entire mortal sword domain. What Wu Yu does every time is earth-shattering. Chen Fui was much more anxious than Wu Yu. As soon as he was done, he asked Qin Fengling to get down. He stared at Wu Yu and sneered, saying, "Wu Yu, you made this mistake and ended your life. Jiquan, if you do this, your intestines will probably turn green, but if you sign the life and death certificate, you won't even have a chance to go on." Wu Yu grinned and said, "I just want to ask, are you ready with the 10,000 yuan golden elixir in your hand?" Of course, it depends on whether you can survive or not. Chen Fui found that the more he talked to Wu Yu, the only one who became angry was himself. There were more and more people around, and Chen Fui was even more dissatisfied. He didn't bother to say anything more. Before Qin Fengling announced the start, he took action directly. On the way just now, Li Yujun had told Wu Yu in detail about Chen Fui's various abilities, including his most powerful psychic weapons, Taoism, and supernatural powers, so that Wu Yu knew what he was doing. At this moment, the shadow under Chen Fui's feet actually moved and stood upright on Chen Fui's body, turning into a black shadow with the same shape as Chen Fui. This is the effect of his immortal root shadow tree. Planting this immortal root is like giving him a clone. The shadow can also fight and kill. This is actually the reason why Chen Fui is interested in my outlaw clone. This shadow clone gave Chen Fui almost a double attack, which should not be underestimated. Of course, Chen Fui's abilities are more than that. Heaven-swallowing record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 316. The sword he is holding now is called the Red Shadow Heart Sword. It is said to be the top psychic weapon and is worth more than twice as much as the Zhufangzhen demonic pillar. This is why Chen Fui cannot use higher-level magic weapons and cannot control them, otherwise he would not be limited to the Red Shadow Heart Sword. In addition, he also wears a piece of mail worth more than 2,000 merits. It is also a magical weapon called Silver Moon Armor. You only need to inject the elixir into it and activate the Silver Moon Unbreakable formation. Normally at the 9th level of the Jindan Dao realm, it would be difficult to even injure Chen Fui. In addition, he also has powerful Taoism and magical powers. The only good news is that Chen Fui's realm is the 9th level of the Golden Elixir realm, not the 10th level. However, the nature of the Golden Elixir is also the 4th level and possesses strange phenomena. It is said that his father was titled, Red Shadow Sword Master. Now, with Chen Fui's Red Shadow Heart Sword in hand, his shadow clone at his side, and the Silver Moon armor guarding him, his overall strength is estimated to be stronger than that of the Golden Stone Spirit Monkey, equivalent to the 10th level of the ordinary Golden Core Dao realm. If he didn't have such capital, Chen Fui wouldn't be so angry. Why would a mortal elixir disciple who is at the 6th level of the Golden Elixir realm and can only defeat the 7th level dare to talk to him like this? In a blink of an eye, hundreds of people flocked to the meeting and had a heated discussion. Chen Fui didn't even bother to use his true body, so he directly controlled the shadow clone and charged towards Wu Yu. When he grasped the Red Shadow Heart Sword, his shadow also had an extra sword in his hand. Part of the principles of this shadow clone are somewhat similar to my lawless clone, but it is made of immortal roots, and its future plasticity is far less than that of my lawless clone. Judging from its speed and attack intensity, Wu Yu concluded that this shadow clone posed no threat to him, so he easily used the Yin-Yang Dao sword. There was a sword in each hand, one black and one white, and the sword light was surging. Although the Yin-Yang Dao sword is far inferior to Chen Fuiu's weapon, in Wu Yu's hands, the sword is majestic and not weak at all. Aha! The shadow clones struck out with several swords. In an instant, the sky was covered with black sword shadows, rushing towards Wu Yu from the ground. They seemed invisible, but in fact they were very lethal. Xuanhuan Divine Sword. When Wu Yu faced Chen Fuiu, he casually used a sword to spurt out cold energy and sweep away. The cold wave was like sword energy, instantly freezing Chen Fuiu's shadow clone and his attack, greatly reducing his speed. Pure Yang Breaking Void Sword. Then he threw out a sword, and the masculine energy exploded, forming a golden tornado. There was a strangulation and a tearing sound. In an instant, Chen Fuiu's shadow clone was directly torn apart. In the blink of an eye, his shadow returned, arriving at Chen Fuiu's feet. The moment the battle started, Wu Yupo easily defeated Chen Fuiu's attack. When Wu Yu waved the two swords in his hands and looked at Chen Fuiu with a mocking look, the hundreds of people who came were in an uproar. They thought that Chen Fuiu could kill Wu Yu easily. "Mr. Chen, don't play around with this guy. His proud face is really disgusting. Let him go to hell as soon as possible to avoid dirtying our sister's eyes. Yes, look at his arrogant behavior." The group of beauties were standing under the battlefield of life and death, talking in a variety of ways. Seeing the immortal root being destroyed, Chen Fuiu found that he had underestimated his opponent and failed to seize the first opportunity. Moreover, Wu Yu was still relaxed. Seeing his joke, Chen Fuiu suddenly felt a majestic fire in his heart, and it burned again. "Got up! Despicable thing," Chen Fuiu yelled angrily, and finally exploded. The 9th level of his golden elixir realm and extremely high-quality elixir was suddenly swept away, and the red shadow heart sword magic circle in his hand disappeared completely. Traces, Chen Fuiu seemed to be holding a non-existent person, invisible and intangible, but Wu Yu felt that these killing swords were following him in all directions. The red shadow heart sword is likely to appear anywhere. The red shadow heart sword danced, and Chen Fuiu instantly turned into the shadows, like an assassin, an invisible killer. His body was short, but his speed was quite fast. In the blink of an eye, he was beside Wu Yu, as if he had become a phantom, and others were there. At this moment, he couldn't even grasp Chen Fuiu's position. Buzz! Suddenly there were thousands of shadow-like sword energy around him, forming a tornado-like existence, dancing wildly around Wu Yu, and every sword was a sword that pierced the heart. This is the shadow-killing heart sword technique. Li Yujun introduced that Chen Fuiu was also the best at sword cultivation, killing people invisibly. For a moment, Wu Yu couldn't find Chen Fuiu, but Chen Fuiu used his superb Taoist skills and transcendent alchemy to directly seal his fate. I'm afraid that in the next moment, he would take Wu Yu's life. Even the beauties below became enthusiastic. "This poor fool has pissed Mr. Chen off, and he doesn't know that he is about to return to the West. Didn't you see that his face was pale and he almost cried out of fright?" But it was useless. The shadow-killing heart sword technique would make him riddled with holes in an instant. It is said that there once was a demon of the 10th level of the demon core, and that was like this being torn apart by Mr. Chen, let alone this guy who is just about to become a Huangjian level disciple. To be honest, he might not even know how to escape Bailey Fi Hung from this technique. Shen Xingyu hadn't arrived yet, so he was feeling nervous. Wu Yu, on the other hand, was actually not nervous at all. Before the opponent found the best opportunity to kill him, Wu Yu grinned and said, "Well, I'll just let you see, so what?" He took out 3 golden hairs and blew them casually. When they met the wind, they turned into 3 identical Wu Yes. Almost no one on the scene could tell the difference. Wu Yu and his 3 clones crossed each other in this short moment, and even exchanged the spiritual instruments in their hands. Not to mention Chen Fuyu, even Li Yujun, the only one in the Purple Mansion Kanghai realm, couldn't tell which of the four Wu Yes was the real one. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Whoosh! Wu Yu's mind moved, and the four of him broke out in four directions, making it difficult to distinguish. This move immediately disrupted Chen Fuyu's rhythm. He was about to assassinate Wu Yu, but this change suddenly occurred. Which one was the real Wu Yu? Go to hell! He couldn't hurry too fast. He had already missed the best opportunity, so he attracted many shadow sword energies, which suddenly gathered and whistled. With the momentum of the collapse of the sky and the crack of the earth, he violently killed the four Wu Yes. The sword energy that each Wu Yu endured was almost the same. He Wu Yu smiled in his heart. In fact, even if he resisted all the sword energy, he would not feel any pressure. However, he had to win beautifully. Boom! For a moment, the four Wu Yes each displayed their magical powers and fought against the thousands of shadow sword energy. This hidden and sharp sword energy did not kill even one Wu Yu for a moment. Wu Yu used various defensive sword techniques to block Chen Fuyu's attack in the first place. The next moment, among the four Wu Yes, the real Wu Yu suddenly broke out. The spiritual instrument in his hand was replaced with the Nine Directions Demon Pillar, and then he rushed out directly from the shadow sword energy with the golden body of Namo Baiyuang Buddha. The Nine Directions Demon Pillar instantly turned into an extremely huge one, and suddenly rushed to Chen Fuyu's eyes across 100 feet, sweeping away. Chen Fuyu was controlling the shadow-killing heart sword technique, but he didn't know that he was so violent. He had to recycle the shadow sword energy in a hurry to block it in front of him, and then rely on the protection of the Silver Moon armor to resist Wu Yu's sudden critical attack. Boom boom boom. Wu Yu used the thick nine-sided demon pillar to bombard 3 times in a row. The third time he broke a black barrier and directly bombarded Chen Fuyu, who was staggering. At that moment, the Silver Moon armor was activated, forming a magic circle to block his eyes. Wu Yu hit it once, and the magic circle was violently shaken. Chen Fuyu was rushed out and fell heavily on the battlefield of life and death. Bang bang bang. It was not until this time that Wu Yu's 3 clones exploded into smoke in front of everyone. In fact, they turned into golden hairs and returned to Wu Yu's head. Boom! Wu Yu placed the 9-sided demon suppressing pillar on the battlefield of life and death, and the iron battlefield trembled and roared. At this moment, he was relaxed and arrogant, standing on the battlefield of life and death, and instantly formed a sharp contrast with the embarrassed Chen Fuyu off the field. In fact, from Chen Fuyu's attack, surrounding him with shadow-killing heart sword technique, to Wu Yu's display of the great Dao magical power, and then counter-suppressing Chen Fuyu, it only took a few breaths. Therefore, when people were still worried about Wu Yu's life and death, Chen Fuyu had already fallen to the ground, covered in dust. Time was so fast that most people did not react. Li Yujun, Bailey Fiheng, and Qin Fengling were all stunned and did not move for a long time, not to mention the people who stared with eyes wide open and could not believe it. Is Wu Yu going to defy the heavens? Chen Fuyu is the son of the Red Shadow Sword Saint, and is very much loved. He is 20 years older than Wu Yu, and has been blessed with resources since childhood. He is also trained by the Red Shadow Sword Saint himself. How could he be defeated by Wu Yu? Wu Yu's physique is extremely strong, and no one can defeat him. But he is only at the 5th level of the Golden Core Dao realm. Oh, he has already reached the 6th level. His speed is also very fast. However, Chen Fuyu is only at the 9th level of the Golden Core Dao realm after all. It is said that some people at the 10th level are not his opponents. How is this possible? Am I dazzled? How can I see like this? The many people present were shocked by this scene, even more than when Wu Yu defeated He Taiwei and Zhao Xianxian in the 10,000 Swords Immortal battle. Not to mention them, look at Chen Fuiu's female companions, each of them looked pale as if they had eaten a fly, and some even sat down on the ground in a hurry, losing their posture. It is not an exaggeration to say that they were terrified. They wanted to think it was an illusion, but the facts were right in front of them, and God could not change it. Is Wu Yu a monster sent down from heaven? Otherwise, how could he do it? Just as they were discussing miserably, Chen Fuiu, who was not seriously injured by Silver Moon armor, was completely furious and fell to the ground. After listening to those discussions, his blood boiled. He was afraid that he had never been so angry in his life. To Chen Fuiu, he was like the son of a lion, walking proudly on the grassland. The beasts retreated in fear, but a wolf cub ran out and abused him. How could he swallow this breath and calm down? Wu Yu. Chen Fuiu roared and rushed to the battlefield of life and death, panting heavily, his eyes were already bloodshot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 317. My defeated general, do you still want to continue? Wu Yu just wanted to make him angry for the sake of 10,000 yuan Jindan. In this monastic world, background and status are important, but in the end the children themselves have to fight. Therefore, Wu Yu did not take the son of Xuanhuan sword master seriously from the beginning. How could Chen Fuiu know what he was doing if he indulged in sensuality and wandering? Those who practice Tao naturally use Tao to judge their superiority and inferiority. When he was called the defeated general, Chen Fuiu's anger rose to an unprecedented level, and all his dignity in this life was trampled under Wu Yu's feet. There is a word called furious and furious, which can vividly describe Chen Fuiu at this moment, with his hair standing on end as if struck by lightning. For a moment, the alchemy on his body roared. In the 9th level of the golden elixir, the vast alchemy was like a river and sea rushing, roaring across his body with great force. The only magical imprint on the golden elixir was triggered by it. At this moment, Chen Fuiu was both bloody and spent almost all his strength, intending to defeat Wu Yu and wipe out the hated person in front of him. Shadowless God Realm. Wu Yu heard Li Yujun describe this magical power. This was the magical power chosen by the Xuanhuan sword master for his son. It was naturally unusual. It was Chen Fuiu's unique skill of pressing the box. He could only use it 3 times in total. Every time, it amazes everyone and spreads its praises thousands of miles away. In this instant, Chen Fuiu's skin began to change color, and his whole body was completely dark. As if he had walked out of the night, with his body as the core, a magical power suddenly arose and swept across. At this moment, Wu Yu, there was a feeling of entering the heart fruit. A darkness spread with Chen Fuiu as the center, completely covering the entire battlefield of life and death. This magical power seems to be able to create a realm that belongs to Chen Fuiu. In this realm, everyone except him has lost their vision. In other words, in the darkness, he cannot be seen like a shadow at all. There was deathly silence in front of him, and there was no figure of Chen Fuiu at all, but Chen Fuiu did exist, and maybe at a certain moment, he would deliver a fatal blow. Standing outside the battlefield of life and death, you can see that Wu Yu is now completely enveloped in a pitch-black sun, and everything inside is no longer visible to people. But there is no doubt that Chen Fuiu's magical power is quite terrifying. Rumor has it that this is one of the great magical powers of the Red Shadow Sword Master. Wu Yu, are you afraid that you won't be lucky this time? Such a terrifying shadowless god realm was completely controlled by Chen Fuiu. Wu Yu fell into it and actually lost the initiative. In the dark night, Chen Fuiu was like a night elf, walking among them silently. He was born to be an assassin and a killer. The moment the shadowless god realm enveloped him, Wu Yu, who had lost track of his opponent, felt a shiver down his spine. Feeling. Then I'll play with you. Wu Yu repeated his old trick, and in the blink of an eye, 3 more identical versions of him appeared next to him. This was another type of attack by the outlaw clones on a purely offensive level. At this moment, 4 Wu Yu passed by and changed position, transformation. Wu Yu only needs to be slightly covered. To be honest, when the 4 of him disperse, no matter how powerful the being comes forward, it is not clear which one is him. Chenfuyu, how are you? 4 Wu Ye spoke at the same time in unison. In fact, Wu Yu can conjure up 10 other selves, but he just doesn't want to be completely exposed. In the dark night, Wu Yu felt Chenfuyu's obvious anger. It was obvious that Wu Yu showed this magical power again, which completely put him in a difficult situation. It was obvious that he only had a chance to kill with 1 hit, but to attack any Wu Yu, he only needed to choose get it wrong and it's likely that he'll expose himself. But he didn't know that his anger would also expose him. Even if he turned into a shadow and walked in this dark world, when he was angry, the evil energy all over his body was so obvious in the darkness. Chenfuyu, even with this extraordinary magical power, is still too weak. The Scarlet Shadow Sword Master is like an assassin. Wu Yu has seen many assassins in the mortal world. The most basic thing at this moment is that he will not reveal his emotions easily while dormant. But this Chenfuyu is young and energetic, and his Wu Yu was so excited that he immediately appeared. Wu Yu roughly grasped his position at that moment. It broke out in an instant. 3 of the clones, holding psychic weapons, immediately launched sword attacks. They did not attack Chenfuyu head-on, but chose to block it, blocking the possibility of Chenfuyu escaping in other directions. At the same time, the real Wu Yu took action in an instant, and the psychic weapon in his hand was directly replaced by the 9 directions suppressing demonic pillar. The 9 directions suppressing demonic pillar merged into one, and 1 stick reached the sky. Zhufang breaks the boundary. The shadowless god realm is a realm. The 9-party boundary breaking formation is best at breaking boundaries. With a sweep of the stick, the golden light reaches the sky. This golden light turns into a dragon with fangs and claws, violently tearing apart the shadowless god realm. Its most violent power is in with the support of Wu Yu's vast alchemy and majestic body. The stick's speed was unprecedented, and Chenfuyu happened to be intercepted by Wu Yu's 3 clones using sword cultivation skills. Chenfuyu was shocked, but even the Scarlet Shadow Heart Sword was unable to intercept it at this time. Besides, Wu Yu's stick was too overbearing. Suddenly, the 9 directions suppressing demonic pillar flew away its psychic magic weapon and hit the silver wall. There was a scratch on the moon armor, and even the silver moon armor had cracks. As for Chenfuyu, he was knocked out and vomited blood instantly. Under this heavy blow, his bones and internal organs were shattered, and blood even burst out from his pores. Come out! A heavy blow. The entire shadowless god realm suddenly shattered, like glass shattering. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. It was not until this time that people could clearly see the internal battle. When the shadowless god realm was shattered, they saw Chenfuyu vomiting blood and flying backwards, saw Wu Yu smash everything with a stick, and saw Chenfuyu rolling on the ground, twitching and trembling all over, his eyes rolled back, and his defeat was really miserable. At that moment, Wu Yu quietly landed on the ground, put away his clone and the 9-sided demon pillar. Everything was so calm and comfortable. To be honest, if other 9th level Jindan Dao realm met Wu Yu would be able to defeat him with 1 move. Chenfuyu played the 10th level Jindan Dao realm because his magic tools, Taoist magic, magical powers, and Dan Yuan were all excellent, so Wu Yu also dealt with him for such a long time. However, Wu Yu did not use all his strength. If he added violent magic, it was obvious that he could kill Chenfuyu in 1 go, but there was no need to commit the sin of killing. As for Chenfuyu, he seemed to be seriously injured, but Wu Yu was also very careful. He just made him completely lose his fighting ability, and he even lost the ability to take out the talisman. However, with Chenfui's financial resources, he would probably be able to jump around again after half a month of recuperation. Wu Yu. Bailey Fiheng and Li Yujun both jumped up and stood beside Wu Yu in shock. Seeing Chenfui's condition, they were terrified. When they looked at Wu Yu again, they looked at him like a monster, and even trembled when they spoke. It's incredible. Your fighting ability is absolutely the best in the yellow sword class. Even if you reach the black sword domain, you can still dominate. I have practiced for hundreds of years, but I am almost no match for you. Bailey Fiheng was more amazed at Wu Yu's strength than worrying about Chenfui's serious injury. Li Yujun was also terrified, staring at Wu Yu with wide eyes, wishing to cut Wu Yu open. In fact, they didn't quite understand how Wu Yu defeated Chenfui just now. Qin Fengling was really scared and her face turned pale, and she hurried to take care of Chenfui. At this time, the battle was over, and there were thousands of people around, many of whom had just arrived and happened to see the last scene. At this time, the whole place was dead silent, and everyone stared at Wu Yu in amazement, and then looked at Chenfui, feeling as if they were dreaming. Is this a ghost in broad daylight? Many people felt this way. Wow, in the battlefield of life and death, a group of beauties were pale, crying, and surrounded Chenfui, making Chenfui look as if he had lost his life. They also turned back to look at Wu Yu. At first, they were frightened by Wu Yu and dared not look at Wu Yu, but when they realized that Chenfui was not dead, they got bolder and started to yell and curse. Wu Yu, you're dead. You dared to hurt the son of the Red Shadow Sword Saint. You're so brave. If the Red Shadow Sword Saint knows about this, you will definitely die. If you don't kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistake, you may still have a chance to survive. My God, you even dared to hurt Master Chen. You really have a problem with your brain. Are you just looking for death? In public, Wu Yu walked towards Chenfui with a calm face. The women were scolding him fiercely. When they saw Wu Yu move, they were frightened and scattered like frightened birds, leaving the way for Wu Yu. In fact, Chenfui didn't faint, but was still very sober. At this time, he stood up with the help of Qin Fengling, and he had no strength to fight again. Their eyes collided again. In Chenfui's eyes, there was only deep hatred, and this anger seemed to have turned into a blood feud. Wu Yu knew that this kind of people, descendants of the strong, could not stand provocation. Chenfui, you are the son of the Sword Saint of Shushan, you can't afford to lose, right? Wu Yu looked at him with a warm look, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. Chenfui's eyes were bloodshot, and his body was still trembling. He did not respond to Wu Yu's words, but took out a communication talisman and handed it to Qin Fengling, coughing dryly, let my father come over, this man must die today. Wu Yu overestimated him. He was defeated on the spot, but he actually called him dad. Qin Fengling was embarrassed. Would this matter alarm the Red Shadow Sword Saint? Bailey Fiheng was also anxious, and hurriedly said, Mr. Chen, this is absolutely not allowed. You and Wu Yu are just juniors, and it is a normal exchange. How can you alarm the Red Shadow Sword Saint? Wu Yu is also young and energetic, but he dare not take the 10,000 yuan golden pill. Please don't make a big deal about this. Chenfui was too lazy to listen and gestured to Qin Fengling. Wu Yu held down Bailey Fiheng and said, why worry about it? The Red Shadow Sword Saint is here, can he kill me? His son took the initiative to provoke me and made a bet with me. When we come to this battlefield of life and death, I will spare his life, but he still wants to call me daddy. It's a joke. I, Wu Yu, have never seen such a coward in my lifetime. Such a coward is not qualified to be my opponent, haha. Dear readers, don't you agree, mobile phone users? Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 318. His voice was loud, and as the number of people increased, it spread throughout the entire place in an instant. This passage, coward, is really vivid, explaining Xuanhuan's behavior at this moment. Being so insulted in public, Xuanhuan was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. Wu Yu is indeed not afraid of him at all. Public opinion is a force that kills people without blood. Today, Wu Yu defeated Xuanhuan in public. It was all based on his personal strength. After this battle, his reputation as a genius will definitely shine even more brightly. Even if the Scarlet Shadow Sword Master comes, can he attack Wu Yu indiscriminately in public? Absolutely not, unless this Red Shadow Sword Master wants to leave a stain that will never be erased in his lifetime. The Xuanhuan Immortal sect has rules. Even the Xuanhuan Sword Master can kill people indiscriminately when Wu Yu is absolutely right. How many people's hearts will it be chilled? You know, in this Immortal sect, most of them are people like Wu Yu who have no background at all. Everyone wants fairness. Today, Xuanhuan not only lost the battle, but also completely lost his character. After being suppressed by Wu Yu's few words, Xuanhuan vomited blood again and almost fainted. Qin Fengling did not dare to make a random decision. Thousands of people around were witnesses. When the first person echoed Wu Yu, everyone immediately started shouting. Wu Yu is right. On the battlefield of life and death, you signed a life and death battle. If he didn't kill you, you have to be grateful. If you want to alert the Crimson Shadow Sword Master, wouldn't it be embarrassing for the Crimson Shadow Sword Master to come over? Indeed, Wu Yu does have a point in this matter. Xuanhuan is notorious for being domineering. When Wu Yu stepped on him, the others were immediately rude. I am afraid that Xuanhuan never imagined that one day he would be humiliated to such an extent. Give it to me. In anger, he grabbed the communication talisman, threw it to a woman behind him, and shouted, "Let my father kill the person." Yes, the woman turned pale with fright. Just as she was about to activate the communication talisman, suddenly the communication talisman came out of her hand, flew into the sky, fell into a person's hand, and instantly turned into flames and disappeared. The person coming is Shenzhengyu. Xuanhuan, you were defeated on the spot. I could see it clearly. Isn't that embarrassing enough? Do you believe that you called the Red Shadow Sword Master and he destroyed you on the spot? In terms of status, only Shenzhengyu can compare with Xuanhuan. This sentence immediately made Xuanhuan's face turn pale and he staggered back several steps. He naturally knew that the Scarlet Shadow Sword Master had great expectations for him and thought that he could one day surpass his father, but today he actually failed. To this extent. As a father, are you afraid that you will vomit 3 liters of blood? Shenzhengyu stared at him and said, if I were you, I would immediately hand over the 10,000 yuan golden elixir. There is no backstage to fight in the battlefield of life and death. If you lose, you will die. If you don't die, it is luck. If you lose today, it is a foregone conclusion. Man, just you should go back to practice hard and fight again one day, instead of wallowing around here, causing people to laugh at you, and embarrassing your father. Shenzhengyu's words are all sharp. However, this is indeed the best way for Xuanhuan. Losing today is a foregone conclusion. If he can defeat Wu Yu in the future, he will truly avenge his past humiliation. Wu Yu, Xuanhuan, will remember today's revenge. I will fight with you again on the battlefield of life and death tomorrow. I will feed the fish with your eyes. Xuanhuan gritted his teeth, took out a sumiru bag, and threw it to Wu Yu. I really got the 10,000 yuan golden elixir. Wu Yu smiled and said, sparring is normal, I certainly welcome it, but next time you come to see me, remember to bring 100,000 yuan of gold elixir. That's how I am. I don't want to take away the money if you exchange your life. If I defeat you, your life will be valuable. With the outlaw clone, Wu Yu knew that he would always be poor. However, with Chen Fuyu as the scapegoat, it will be useless if you don't kill him. As for the future, there is no need to worry. He is being crushed by Wu Yu now, and in the future Wu Yu can destroy him with just a breath. Walk. Chen Fuyu roared and left with great momentum, but Qin Fengling still had to take him with him to send him away, otherwise it would be difficult for him to fly with a sword in his current condition. When Chen Fuyu left the battlefield of life and death, many cultivators looked at Wu Yu and couldn't help but defend themselves. Wu Yu's performance today, fearless of power and full of courage, is indeed admirable. Xingyu, you're here. Li Yujun ran over quickly. Get lost. Shen Xingyu glared at him. Okay, get out now. Li Yujun quickly moved away. Looking at her expression, she looked like an angry little daughter-in-law. When everyone saw it, they couldn't help but smile. There are too many people pursuing Shen Xingyu, even Li Yujun has to fight hard. Shen Xingyu's figure swayed and came to Wu Yu's eyes. She looked up and down a lot, her eyes were slightly serious, and she said, "You were a little impulsive today. Although the harvest is huge, it is also dangerous. You should think more about it in the future." Wu Yu nodded and said, "I will pay more attention, but in fact, the rules here in Xuanhuan are strict and it is much safer than in the endless demon sea. Everyone has come back to life there, so the problem here is not too big." Shen Xingyu smiled helplessly and said, "You are right. You really haven't made it clear yet. Your combat power has reached such an extent. You can defeat a genius like Chen Fuyu across 3 levels. This is unprecedented in Xuanhuan. After today's battle, your reputation will be much louder. I'm afraid you can surpass me directly if I give you some time." Since she met Wu Yu, her progress has not been as great as Wu Yu's. At least, no one in the Huang sword domain can be your opponent. Have you cultivated your magical power today and want to go to the Huang sword domain? Wu Yu nodded. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Li Yujun, why haven't you finished it yet? Shen Xingyu turned around. Right away, right now, Wu Yu, come with me. Li Yujun quickly pulled Wu Yu and roared away in the direction of the Shengxian palace as if he had been beaten to death. Shen Xingyu chuckled, looked at Wu Yu's leaving figure, and murmured, "This boy has created miracles many times. My brother's vision is really much better than mine. He also has a very pleasant temperament and a very mature mind. He may be able to do it in the future. Working with my brother to strengthen Xuanhuan, maybe I can help him a little bit. I need to keep an eye on him and don't let him die young. Wu Yu will definitely be a dragon among men in the future. Today, he did many things that I didn't dare to do at all, and he handled them very well." Chen Fuyu was crushed by him in terms of strength and mind. Bai Li Fiheng also sighed with emotion. He went to Huangjianyu. Huangjianyu is currently my brother's territory. From now on, no one dares to touch him, not even the Crimson Shadow Sword Master. My brother is making rapid progress, and now the Crimson Shadow Sword Master is no match for him. How awesome is the boss? Li Fiheng was speechless. When they leave, the people on the battlefield of life and death slowly disperse, but the details and truth of this fierce battle will be spread to the entire mortal sword realm, and even the 4 major sword regions, through their mouths. After all, the 4 major sword realms on Qingtianshu Mountain are common. People like Chen Fuyu are known to almost all the 4 major sword-level disciples in the market, but few can do anything to him. He was tortured so badly today, which is a great relief. Wu Yu's physical strength is too strong, his mind is very mature, and his spirit is fortitude. He is simply a replica of the Galaxy Sword Master. Although the Galaxy Sword Master does not accept him as his disciple now, he obviously wants to protect him as he grows up. In time, I am afraid that he will become a disciple again. A new star in Xuanhuan shakes Shenzhou. It's still far away now. Let's wait until he has the ability to protect himself in this divine continent. Potential is potential. Before it is converted into strength, any sword level can kill him thousands of times. The value is also he's 10 times more. Discussions about Wu Yu naturally occur everywhere. At this time, Wu Yu had already updated his disciple's talisman in the Shengxian Palace to become a Huangjian level disciple, and then recorded it in the data. From now on, he would be eligible to enter the Huangjian realm. I will take you to the Domain Lord's mansion in the Huangjian region, where they will arrange a place for you to practice in the Huangjian region. Shen Xingyu has already come down, and he will guide Wu Yu on the way. As for Bailey Fiheng, he will go back to Zhanxian Palace, while Li Yujun has to stay. Ascension Hall. Region Lord's mansion. Wu Yu thought for a while, and it seems that the Yin Dao Lu has recorded that the 4 major sword domains have a domain master. They all seem to be strong men at the Shushan sword master level, and are mainly responsible for managing each major sword domain. Disciple, take charge of leadership, distribution, execution, and other tasks. Well, the Domain Lord's mansion is the core of every sword domain. Do you know which sword master is the domain master of the yellow sword domain? Shen Xingyu asked with a smile as he led Wu Yu through the passage behind the Immortal Palace. I don't know. Wu Yu shook his head. He only knew of 2 sword masters, one Zing, and the other Red Shadow. Of course, Shen Xinjiao. He just took office. His master was afraid that he would be too anxious to practice, so he found some chores to distract him. It is said that it is useful for him, Shen Xingyu said. This Galaxy Sword Master, whom he had never met before, was actually the domain master of the Yellow Sword domain. Don't be nervous. It's just a training palace. You won't be able to see him at all. I'll go over there with you and it will be done in a moment. However, your future training in Huangjianyu will be up to you. Thank you, Sister Shen. It is convenient to have a noble person to help you. Shen Xingyu smiled sweetly and said, don't be too polite. The days are still long. To practice Taoism is to help each other. If I like you, you will like me. In the blink of an eye, they are about to go to Qingtianshu mountain. Standing at the foot of the mountain and looking up to the majestic mountains, there is indeed a big difference whether it is on the Qingtianshu mountain. After thinking for a long time, I finally have the qualifications to climb the Qingtianshu mountain. Even if it is only the Huangjianyu, it is a huge improvement. In the sky, colorful clouds are all over the place, sword energy is everywhere, and tight chains surround the sky, as if a demon is screaming and roaring. There is a film of light in front of him. Wu Yu walked in, as if he were in another world. Blue sky, Shushan. At 2200 hours in the evening, there is still one chapter as expected. Mobile phone users. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 319. Qingtian Shushan, the core of Shushan, a new world. The sword is flying. Shen Xingyu smiled tenderly, and charged into the sky with his sword. Wu Yu followed closely behind him. He penetrated through the heavy clouds and mist. When he looked up, he saw that the sky was shrouded in rays of light and colorful colors were flying. Going up further, after flying for a full hour, we entered the Yellow Sword territory. The area below can only be regarded as the foot of the mountain. Wu Yu is now a little far away from the real mountain of Qingtianshu mountain. He looked over there and saw countless magnificent palaces inlaid on the mountain of Qingtianshu mountain. The Qingtianshu mountain is almost vertical, so all the buildings in the Immortal Gate are, arrays, settings, etc. are all embedded in it. In the sky, many mysterious magic circles were operating, even holding up islands flying across the sky. Wu Yu has now done some research on magic formations, but he is only a beginner. These complex operation formations and attack and killing formations are complex and profound. Among them, the most complete and perfect ones supporting the Qingtianshu mountain are probably built by people in the form of Yuan Shen and have been passed down through the ages. An extremely splendid world of immortality, based on the magic circle, unfolded before Wu Yu's eyes. In this yellow sword domain, the only way to get from one palace to another is to fly with your sword. After all, the entire Qingtianshu mountain is almost vertical and the mountain is steep. If it weren't for the construction of a large number of palaces and the excavation of a large number of caves, almost all of the Qingtianshu mountain, which is rich in aura, would be there is no place to stand. Compared with the huge Xuanhuan mountain in the blue sky, ascetics are as small as ants. Even those densely packed palaces and caves supported by magic formations are actually very small. The Yellow Sword region has the most caves. Every Huangjian level disciple is qualified to have a training cave. There are differences in the amount of spiritual energy in the caves. This time I will fight for the best one for you. Of course, I am afraid that in a few years, you will have to go to the Xianjian realm. Wu Yu followed Shenzingyu as he flew around the Qingtianshu mountain with his sword. The location of the region lord's mansion was to the west of the Qingtianshu mountain. But just now they were due east, and even going around had to be some distance away. During this period of closure, Wu Yu saw many caves. However, most of the caves were closed, indicating that their owners were in retreat to practice Taoism. The four major sword-level caves in Xuanhuan all have defensive arrays, which require unique array tokens to open. Therefore, without the owner's consent, outsiders who forcefully break into their caves need to be punished. The Immortal sect at least guarantees that when a disciple is practicing, he is safe and undisturbed. In Wu Yu's view, the Xuanhuan Immortal sect is a monastic army with strict hierarchy, complex structure, strict rules, and is managed like an army. Fandan disciples and the four great sword-level disciples are just like soldiers and generals at all levels, as well as martial-level figures such as the 7 Immortals of Xuanhuan. Being able to join such a collective and see the magnificent scenery of this vast immortal gate in this life can be regarded as a life without regrets. Thinking back to those days when I led troops to fight, how could I have imagined that today I would be flying across the mountains with my sword, accompanied by immortal beauties? Half a day later, the most magnificent domain lord's mansion in the Huangjian region arrived. The domain lord's mansion was a group of golden palaces embedded in the Qingtianshu mountain. It was like a golden sword piercing the Qingtianshu mountain, with at least a dozen structures built on the blade. Thousands of palaces. It is said that the Galaxy Sword Saint is among them. When we arrived at the domain lord's mansion, Shenzingyu led the way, and everything was easy to handle. Before we even entered the domain lord's mansion, someone brought the array token from the cave mansion. You can name cave number 9, which is currently vacant. Wu Yu blurted out and called, Kishan Cave Mansion. It's level with the sky, quite domineering. Then Shenzingyu took Wu Yu directly to the Kishan Cave Mansion. On the way, he introduced Wu Yu to the specific settings of the Huangjian domain, such as the Hall of Merits, the Hall of Magical Instruments, the Hall of Taoism, etc., such as the Hall of Double Immortals and the Hall of Immortals. There are both the Imperial Palace and the Fixian Palace, and there are even some places that are not found in the Mortal Sword domain. Of course, there are also some restricted areas. This number 9 cave mansion ranks 9th in the Yellow Sword domain in terms of the aura of heaven and earth, and its various configurations are also top-notch. It can be considered the best one currently available. Of course, this is also due to Shenzingyu's relationship. Wu Yu didn't say much when thanking him. After arriving at the Kishan Cave Mansion, first of all, there is a gate outside the cave house. There is a defensive array on the gate. You need to put the array token into the position of the defensive array. That's the opening. In fact, these are two identical magic circles. This type of magic circle has been used to hoard property or protect residences since ancient times. Without the magic circle token, if outsiders attack the gate, the defensive magic circle will resist, unless the man was too strong and directly destroyed the magic circle. Everything you need for daily cultivation is available inside. As long as you don't die, the belongings you put in the cave can't be touched by outsiders, so you can keep them with confidence. If he dies, all the belongings of Xuanhuan disciples will return to Xuanhuan. When walking outside, most people actually don't carry all their treasures with them to avoid being robbed and giving others an advantage. For example, the 4 sword level disciples of Xuanhuan are actually the safest if they are placed in the cave. Shenzingyu was very attentive and gave basically all the necessary introductions. After she finished speaking, she said, "I won't stay any longer. If you need help with anything, just use this talisman to find me." Wu Yu kept all this help in mind. In fact, there was one thing in his heart that was very depressing, and that was the curse mark left by the Wuxian blood qi. He couldn't find anyone to ask. It happened that Shenzingyu was here this time, so Wu Yu didn't let her go first. He said, "Sister Shen, I have something to ask you." "What's the matter?" Wu Yu then explained everything about his encounter with the Wuxian blood qi. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Are you sure it's the Scarlet Blood Demon and the Wuxian blood qi? If you meet them, will you escape unscathed? Shenzingyu was immediately horrified. Sister Shen has also heard of this Wuxian blood qi. Shenzingyu nodded and said, "That's natural. Wuxian blood qi is one of the peak bloodlines of demons. It is not much different from the Beast of 9 Infants and the Dragon of Zuyin. It is said that the talent is terrible, and with the protection of the Dragon of Zuyin, He Ding is one of the masters of the demon clan." Having said this, she quickly took the back of Wu Yu's hand, looked at it carefully, and asked, "Why isn't there the curse seal you mentioned?" Wu Yu said, "The color was very dark at first, but after half a month, it completely disappeared. It is completely invisible now, but I have a hunch that the curse mark still exists." Shenzingyu frowned and said, "The Wuxian blood qi will not kill you, but it uses magical powers to deal with you. What's the point? It is said that this is the first Wuxian blood qi in the divine continent, so no one knows what its magical powers are. This matter I don't know, I have to ask my brother, but it's really hard to figure out what he wants to do. After all, this Wuxian blood qi is just a junior. It is said that he has just arrived in Zifakanghai realm and is not a threat to the monks yet. Therefore, Shenzingyu is not worried that he has any huge conspiracy that is detrimental to Xuanhuan. At most, it will only be detrimental to Wu Yu. I'll ask him soon, but if he doesn't know, then there's nothing I can do to help. After you return to the cave, pay more attention to what's going on outside. If he has time, he should come and see you." Wu Yu felt more at ease now. After Shenzingyu left, he closed the door of the cave. The interior was a completely enclosed space, but due to the effect of the magic circle, the aura of heaven and earth was so rich that it was terrifying. There was fairy mist everywhere, just like the legendary fairyland. Within the cave, there are training rooms, enlightenment rooms, alchemy rooms, magic weapon rooms, rune rooms, etc. Among them, the training room is also the place where the spiritual energy of the cave gathers. Its training environment is indeed much superior to that of the mortal sword domain, but it is different from the other 3. There is no comparison between the great sword level and the Xuanhuan fairyland where Chenfui grew up. The matter of the curse seal can only be solved after Shenzhen comes to the door. After Wu Yu became familiar with Kishan Cave Mansion, he sat cross-legged on the futon in the training room and thought quietly. This futon is also a psychic instrument, which can gather spiritual energy and conduct it into Wu Yu's body, making it easier to refine the golden elixir. Now, there are 3 things at the moment. First, the Wuxian blood Kai's cursed seal. I can't figure it out for the time being. I'll see if the Galaxy Sword Master can give me any advice. Second, after becoming a Huangji level disciple, it seems that I can go back to Suqiao. He missed Wu Yu, Feng Shuiya, and Su Yanli very much. Third, Nangong Wei. I don't care about the first one, but I need to sort out the second and third. Wire probably hasn't come out of the Samsara cave yet, but it's definitely not far away. I've already arrived at Huangjianyu, so I might as well wait for her for a while. Maybe I can go back to Suqiao with her and show my sister. Wu Yu made his decision quickly. Let's wait for Nangong Wei first. I fought with Chenfu. After she comes out, it's easy to find out. Then she will come to me. And I just need to practice Taoism with peace of mind. To sum up, the only thing to do is to practice Taoism. Therefore, he took away the 10,000 yuan gold pills he got today, which was a windfall. Wu Yu's eyes shone when he saw it, and he couldn't help but sigh, it's so great to have Shushan Sword Master as my father. I can throw away the 10,000 yuan golden elixir as soon as I want. It would be great if I could meet a few more such people who were taken advantage of. He pulled 10 clones out of their hair. 10 clones sat cross-legged around him. I don't need the Yuanjin elixir myself for the time being. I need to gain more understanding of the Tao before I can strengthen my own elixir and temper the elixir. However, the clones have not reached their limit yet. Wu Yu is very wealthy now, and since it is ill-gotten wealth anyway, he doesn't feel bad about it and just distributes it out so that each clone can take care of themselves. And he focused on refining elixirs and drawing magic circles. These two processes could allow him to go further on the road to true cultivation. Another month has passed, and the clones have consumed about 7,000 yuan jindan, and have basically reached a saturated state. Currently, unless Wu Yu cultivates his magical power to the 2nd level, or breaks through to the 7th level, the clones our alchemy will no longer rise. Now 10 clones together, without using themselves, it is estimated that the combined force can defeat a 9th level Jindan Dao realm. Of course, the greatest effect of this extra-legal clone is to assist in combat. Wu Yu could feel it when fighting Chenfu. With 3,000 yuan of golden elixir left, Wu Yu was going to exchange it for some books and materials for alchemy and magic circles. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 320. The magical artifact palace and immortal spirit palace inside the Huangjian domain are very easy to find. Wu Yu left Kishan Cave Mansion and exchanged a lot of materials for alchemy and magic circle drawing. He also went to the Taoist Hall to exchange some classics for alchemy and magic circle. He has basically mastered the existing elixirs and magic formations. Among them, there are a lot of magic formations from Black Mountain Ghost Wing that cannot be practiced, so he put those aside for now. The new elixir code contains hundreds of elixir refining methods, which is enough for Wu Yu to ponder for a long time. He has also found a lot of magic circles, including attack and kill magic circles and defense magic circles. He has already entered the threshold of refining magic weapons and talismans, and has the ability to move to a higher level of capital. Even the three-legged cauldron and other tools were exchanged for higher levels. In this way, in the blink of an eye, the 10,000 yuan golden elixir obtained from Chenfu was empty again. Wu Yu originally wanted to find another sword cultivation technique that could surpass the sword technique of heaven, yang, earth, yin, and void, but he didn't have enough yuan jindan. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. The opponents he faced now were almost all disciples of Xianjian level and above. In terms of the quality of sword cultivation, Wu Yu was already lagging behind them. However, I was short of money, so I had to give up first. In fact, everyone else Wu Yu met in the Magical Artifact Hall and the Immortal Spirit Hall already knew him. When Wu Yu passed by, many Huangjian level disciples who were much older than Wu Yu started talking, their eyes showing awe and admiration for Wu Yu. The son of the Scarlet Shadow Sword Master, Chen was completely defeated before Wu Yu's eyes. This boy has extraordinary courage and talent. He is not something that belongs in a pond. It is said that there are really few opponents in the entire Yellow Sword region today. If his defeat of Chen was not accidental, then in all seriousness, he is now the #1 player in the Huangjian region. I heard that there used to be a man named Zhang Futu in the Huangjian region, and he was still his master. Now, being a Huangjian level disciple seems to be nothing to him. Wu Yu is very well known in the Huangjian domain, and even has a lot of popularity in the Xianjian domain. If it weren't for the Galaxy Sword Master still protecting Wu Yu, it is estimated that many Shushan Sword Masters would show up directly to accept Wu Yu as their disciple. He seems to have exchanged some alchemy and magic circle materials. At such a young age, he already knows the importance of refining elixirs and drawing magic circles. This boy's future is really limitless. Of course, it seems that this child is a bit flamboyant, and I am afraid that his passion will go to his head and die early. After all, the young man does not know the dangers of the world, and he has no background. How can he compete with a proud man like Chen Fuyu? As long as Wu Yu passed by, the stares and whispered discussions would almost never stop. Over time, Wu Yu has become accustomed to being completely immersed in the world where he grew up. After returning to Kishan Cave Mansion, in order to advance to the 7th level of the Golden Elixir realm, he began to ponder new elixirs and draw and copy new magic circles. He was very busy every day. Although he was lonely, he was also very fulfilling. Those who have attained the great Dao can remain silent for hundreds of years and have a quiet mind before they can hear the Dao. So he thought that this loneliness was nothing to him. In this vast Shushan immortal sect, everyone is chasing the path of Tao. Although hundreds of years are long, it is also like a snap of a finger. Cultivating Taoism is like Quafa chasing the sun. The sun is hot, but it is too far away after all. Countless people come and go, but most of them die on the way, turn into loess and disappear into thin air. In the Kishan Cave Mansion, Wu Yu circulated in the cultivation room, alchemy room, magic weapon room, etc. In the dead silence, he kept pondering, pursuing inner breakthroughs, and at the same time replenishing some elixir reserves for himself. However, this is a high consumption after all. After a lot of consumption, it didn't take long for the exchanged materials to be basically used up. Most of the magical weapons and elixirs that were forged were not very useful to me. It is of great use and can only be given to other Fandan disciples, and cannot be exchanged for much money. After all, he is still in his infancy, and it would be unbelievable if he could actually refine a magical elixir or a world-shattering magic weapon. Wu Yu's current pursuit of the Tao is very pure, which is why he can endure loneliness and stay in the Kishan cave. Of course, he would occasionally listen to the noise outside to see if anyone would come looking for him, whether it was Shenzhenjiao, Shenzhenyu, or Nangongwei. But there seems to be none. Time flies. Wu Yu soon discovered that he had returned to a state where his Yuan Jindan was 0 and his merits were 0. He realized that it was time to go out and earn resources for monasticism. Every time at this time, Wu Yu would sigh with emotion. If only he, like Chen Fuyu, had a sword master father, he would have whatever he wants. The last fight with Chen Fuyu was a thrilling method. It cannot be used multiple times. If you want to obtain Yuan Jindan, you still have to rely on more honest methods. After recalling it, there are several ways to obtain merit in Huangjianyu. First, there is a place similar to the demon abyss called the number 8 demon locking tower. By killing the demons in it, you can gain merit, but the merit is the lowest. Wu Yu would never go to a place like this again. The second is to perform Shushan missions in exchange for merits. Just like the last mission of Black Mountain Ghost Wing, basically you need to leave Shushan. Although the merits earned are considerable, the problem is that you need to leave Shushan. Wu Yu is afraid that Nangong Wei will come out. Then I couldn't find myself and gave up. The third is the fighting immortal battlefield. This is Wu Yu's goal this time. The Duxian battlefield is a peculiar place. There is no Duxian battlefield in Fanjian domain, but there are Duxian battlefields in the four major sword domains. Naturally, only Huangjian level disciples can participate in the Duxian battlefield in Huangjian domain. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. The mode of Duxian battlefield is somewhat similar to the way Wu Yu challenged Chen Fuyu last time. In each Duxian battlefield, there are 100 separate battlefields. In each battlefield, there are Xuanjian level disciples sitting in charge, responsible for fair judgment and preventing deaths from happening. The two parties who have made an appointment to fight, under completely voluntary conditions, go on stage to fight in a friendly manner, decide the winner, and stop when the point is reached. There is absolutely no life or death. Even if the opponent is seriously injured, he will be punished. Of course, this is based on a very important premise, that is, the competition between the two sides must have chips. It must be said that there is a separate battlefield that is empty. Wu Yu can stand on it first, and then take out 1,000 Yuan Jindan as chips. At this time, others can see that as long as Wu Yu is defeated, he can get these 1,000 Yuan Jindan. Of course, the challenger must take out 1,000 Yuan Jindan, or an item of equal value, and Wu Yu's consent is required before the competition can start, and the winner will get the opponent's chips. People who are too strong can't play in the Duxian battlefield at all, because no one dares to challenge. Wu Yu has not been there yet, so he wants to experience it and see if there are any suckers who challenge him. However, he has no money on him. After thinking about it, he can only take out all the spiritual instruments of his clones, which are estimated to be worth 2,000 Yuan Jindan in total. Whoever wins Wu Yu can take it to Yubao Pavilion to exchange for Yuan Jindan. After getting ready, he left Kishan Cave Mansion and flew to the Duxian battlefield. The Duxian battlefield is a huge floating island suspended next to Qingtian Shushan, with a diameter of more than 200 miles. There are 100 battlefields on it, and each battlefield has a Xuanjian level disciple sitting in charge. Looking from above, there are at least 2,000 yellow sword level disciples wandering around, communicating, and looking for opponents they can challenge. Generally speaking, both sides will fight only when they think they will win, otherwise no one will let the other take advantage. The Duxian battlefield is covered with green grass, and the entire island is supported by a huge magic circle below. The magic circle absorbs the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to maintain the operation of the magic circle. Wu Yu flew over with his sword and landed directly on the ground. The Duxian battlefield was filled with fairy mist, and the yellow sword level disciples watched the battle, wandered around, and shouted, like immortals. Wu Yu turned around and saw that one of the battlefields was still empty, so he quickly rushed up. Without saying a word, he threw 10 spiritual instruments into the chip area and said directly to the many Huangjian level disciples below, I am Wu Yu, waiting for your guidance. I have no other property on me, only these instruments, which add up to about 2,000 Yuan of golden elixirs. I hope you don't laugh at me. To be honest, among the 100 battlefields now, there is really no battlefield with chips reaching the number of 2,000. Wu Yu didn't know that money was hard to come by, and he was gambling as soon as he made a move, which immediately frightened the Huangjian level disciples of the entire fighting immortal battlefield. That's right, it's this Wu Yu. He defeated Chen Fuyu and just came to Huangjian domain not long ago. He actually came to the fighting immortal battlefield. In the entire Huangjian domain, Wu Yu is now an absolute core figure. When he appeared, it caused a sensation in the fighting immortal battlefield for a while. Many Huangjian level disciples who were watching and looking for opportunities to challenge rushed to Wu Yu's side, resulting in almost no onlookers in other battlefields. Wu Yu didn't expect that his appearance would cause such a big commotion. At this moment, he was standing on the battlefield with hundreds or thousands of people staring at him. Not many wanted to challenge him, but many were just watching the fun. A Xuanhuan level disciple next to him checked and announced, "Yes, the total value is indeed more than 2000 yuan Jindan. Who wants to challenge Wu Yu? As long as you beat him, these yuan Jindan will be yours." There was a sudden roar below. Someone laughed and said, "We are not fools. It is rumored that Wu Yu defeated Chen Fuyu. Chen Fuyu is a Xuanjian level disciple of the 9th level of the Jindan Dao realm. Wu Yu can even defeat him. He has long been the number one in the Huangjian domain. These 2000 yuan Jindan are not easy to get." Many people laughed. Wu Yu was depressed. He found that it seemed difficult for him to find an opponent here. Almost all the Huangjian level disciples present thought they were not as good as him. However, he did not leave. Maybe one would appear? By then, the 2000 yuan Jindan would be in hand, which is naturally faster than earning merits. Many of the yellow sword level disciples below did not leave either. Everyone looked at each other, and someone said, "Maybe that battle was an accident. He seems to be at the 6th level of the Golden Core Great Dao realm. No one dares to challenge the smith." Yes, those top 10 of the yellow sword immortal list don't have the courage. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 321. As more and more Huangjian level disciples watched, Wu Yu stood on the battlefield of the immortal fight for 3 days and 3 nights. The battles on other battlefields on the Battle of Immortals have basically ceased. Tens of thousands of Huangjian level disciples have gathered around. Some are standing on the ground, and some are wandering around in the sky with their swords. The news that Wu Yu had set up an arena on the Battle of Immortals has spread throughout the Yellow Sword region, and except for most of the disciples who were cultivating in hiding, they basically came nearby. Of course, there are many people who are eager to give it a try. After all, most people have never seen Wu Yu's ability, so they don't believe it. However, 2000 yuan of golden elixir is a lot, and most of the Huangjian level disciples still can't take it out. Therefore, in the past 3 days, at least hundreds of people hesitated and wanted to go up with enthusiasm, but finally retreated. After all, 2000 yuan, there are really a lot of golden elixirs. Wu Yu planned that if no one challenged him for 10 days, he would have no choice but to leave. Staying any longer would be a waste of time. In fact, a lot of pressure was placed on the top 10 disciples on the Huang Sword Immortal list. After all, they were nominally the 10 strongest disciples in the Huang Sword domain. Therefore, 3 days later, when Wu Yu had given up hope, someone suddenly appeared on the battlefield, and he, without saying anything, he dropped a sumuru bag and threw it in the chip area. Wu Yu looked up and saw that he was a powerful young man with bright eyes. He was probably only a little older than Wu Yu. He was probably a genius at the level of Hitaiyu. He was probably once ranked among the top 10 in the 10,000 Swords Immortal ranking. I, Xuanhuan, am currently ranked number 1 on the Huang Sword Immortal list. I heard that you have set up an arena here, so I came here specifically to ask for advice, Xuanhuan said with a respectful expression while cupping his hands. Wu Yu looked him up and down. He was at the 7th level of the Golden Core Dao realm, approaching the 8th level. At the 8th level, he could become a Xianjian level disciple. However, its elixir is powerful and belongs to the 4th level of vision. It is estimated that it can barely compete with the 8th level of the Golden Elixir realm. Wu Yu said, "You have also heard that I defeated Chen Fuyu. Why did you give him 2000 yuan of golden elixir when you knew he was not my opponent?" After standing here for 3 days, he roughly understood his position in the hearts of many Huangjian level disciples. Xuanhuan smiled and said, "I think it's worth spending 2000 yuan on a golden elixir to fight against the super genius famous in Shushan. Heroic. Wu Yu likes opponents like this, who are ambitious and willful. If Wu Yu were him, he might do the same thing. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Whoosh! A sword actually appeared on Xuanhuan's hands. What surprised Wu Yu was that there was a third sword under his control, circling and flying around his body. The three swords are exactly the same, like blue stars, emitting a faint fluorescent light. Three swords of stars, Xuanhuan said. I only use fists. Wu Yu walked on his back, his feet suddenly accelerated, and his body was like a giant beast. In one move, it seemed that the entire Dosian battlefield was shaking. With a buzz, Wu Yu was already in front of Xuanhuan. Watch the punch, Wu Yu said, and punched out at an extremely fast speed. Xuanhuan was shocked to see the fist approaching, but he found that his speed could not keep up with Wu Yu's speed, and the opponent was absolutely crushing him. The pressure was so fast that before he had the right to take action, he knocked Xuanhuan off the battlefield with one punch. Wow! The crowd started to make a noise and used the simplest martial arts attack to defeat the number 1 Huangji Uncian in one move. This ability was enough to prove Wu Yu's talent. Xuanhuan rolled a few times before he finally stabilized his body. He was in a state of confusion. I am afraid that Wu Yu's punch was really hard for him to forget. At this moment, he felt a real crushing. Goodbye first, Xuanhuan left in a panic. He should have returned to his cave. Have you gained insights? Wu Yu didn't expect it. In fact, Xuanhuan was basically on the verge of a breakthrough, so he needed an opportunity, or to open up the knot in his heart. Everything today, Wu Yu's simplest attack, was probably an accidental attack, and it opened up the knot in his heart, allowing him to he had a chance to advance. 2,000 yuan of golden elixir, in exchange for the 8th level of the golden elixir realm, a Xianjian level disciple, is a good deal. Wu Yu was also happy for that Xuanhuan. The winner is Wu Yu, who received 2,000 yuan of golden elixir from Xuanhuan, announced the presiding Xuanjian level disciple. Everyone cheered and looked at Wu Yu with eyes full of awe and admiration. Wu Yu, you are already a figure who is completely superior to Huangjian level disciples. Yeah, I think the Yellow Sword realm is no longer suitable for you. With your current combat power, you shouldn't have to abide by the old rules of Xusan. I think those elders should be more generous and let you enter the Xianjian realm directly. To be honest, everything here in Huangjianyu is not suitable for you. Even the Xuanjian level disciple behind him said, yes, with your achievements, most Xuanjian level disciples are no match for you. It is indeed a waste for an existence like you to stay in the Yellow Sword domain. If I were you, just ask the Galaxy Sword Master if you can send it to the Xianjian domain in advance. After all, it feels uncomfortable to see all the mountains in the Yellow Sword domain. You can't even find an opponent in the Battle of Immortals. Everyone was also kind-hearted and talked about it all at once. In fact, they didn't tell Wu Yu that he didn't expect this at all. Now it sounds like he feels that there is some truth. In this Huangjian realm, he is much stronger than all the Huangjian level disciples. With his current achievements, he should go to the Xianjian realm, where there are better resources, such as magic weapons, fairies, and Taoism. There are more opportunities to obtain wealth. It's a bit wasteful for me to still stay in Huangjianyu. However, the Xusan Immortal sect has strict rules, which stipulate that only those who have reached the 8th level of the Golden Cordeo realm can enter the Xianjian realm. I don't have any elders at the Sword Master level, so how could anyone make an exception for me? This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. While I was thinking this, I suddenly heard a voice in my ears. Wu Yu, come to the Domain Lord's mansion. Wu Yu was startled and looked around. There was no one around him who said this. This person's voice is bright and has an invisible charm that makes people feel deafened and enlightened. Galaxy Sword Saint Shenzhenjiao. When Wu Yu guessed who the speaker was, he suddenly became excited. He said goodbye to the Huangjian level disciples directly, flew with his sword, and headed towards the domain lord's mansion. He is looking for me now, probably because he is talking about the Wuxian blood qi curse seal. Wu Yu looked at the back of his hand while wielding the sword. Now the curse seal has disappeared, but it is always shrouded like a shadow. Soon after, Wu Yu arrived at the domain lord's mansion. Someone was waiting here and took him directly to see Shenzhenjiao. The territory lord's mansion is very big. After passing through layers of passages, you finally reach the depths of the territory lord's mansion. The walls in the depths are like the starry sky. When Wu Yu walked into a lobby, his feet were empty, and he seemed to be in the universe. The starry sky is empty all around, and you need a sword to stabilize it. Looking into the distance, there are shining stars. This vast galaxy is magnificent, majestic, and endless. Deep in the starry sky, there was a person waiting for him. Wu Yu quickly went up. As he approached, he saw a faint starlight shining on the person. It was difficult to see his face clearly, but his pair of star-like blue eyes were very shining and deep. It was deeply engraved into Wu Yu's heart. Wu Yu has met the Galaxy Sword Master. After arriving in front of the man, Wu Yu saluted respectfully. In fact, the Galaxy Sword Master had a great influence on his destiny. Shenzhenjiao said in a gentle voice, "Show me your hand." Wu Yu quickly reached out his hand. The other party looked at it for a few times, pondered for a moment, and said, "It didn't disappear, it just melted into your body and hid in the corner." I'll tell you the truth, the Wuxian blood qi is an alien demon that has never been recorded in the history of Shenzhou. So no one knows what its magical power is, and there is no way to solve it. I also asked my master, and he didn't know the answer. He was quite direct and gave Wu Yu such bad news as soon as they met. However, Wu Yu was still grateful to him. After all, for such a big shot, he had fulfilled his duty by asking one of the 7 immortals of Xuanhuan about his matter. "What should I do?" Wu Yu asked. Shenzhenjiao said, "In the future, I will check some ancient information to see if there is any news. As for you, you can also think about it yourself and see if it can be cleared. If there is no other way, I'm afraid you can only wait." "Thank you, Sword Master. After all, this is his own business, and he needs to take care of it. Tell me about your experience at the Supreme Hunting Ground. About Zhuiying and Wuxian blood qi." After talking to him, Wu Yu felt that he was a trustworthy person, so he explained it clearly to him. After listening, Shenzhenjiao thought for a moment and said, "I guess it should be related to Zhuiying. There is no need for him to target you. It should be aimed at Zhuiying." 9 infants. Wu Yu didn't expect this at all, but after hearing what he said, it was indeed very possible, otherwise he would have nothing to do with the Wuxian blood qi. The infant emperor and the Zhu emperor are competing for hegemony. Wuxian blood qi wants Zhuiying to die in infancy. It's normal. I just don't know what will be done. If you spend time with Zhuiying in the future, you should pay attention to it. However, Wu Yu, I suggest it's good for both of you not to have anything to do with Zhuiying from now on. Do you understand what I mean? Monsters are the most taboo in Xuanhuan, and Wu Yu certainly understands this. Shenzhenjiao said this for his own good. Understood, but there shouldn't be a chance to get together. Wu Yu smiled and could only wait for Shenzhenjiao to find out anything else. "There is one more thing," Shenzhenjiao said. Speaking. "Huang Jianyu is of no use to you. I am going to send you to Suan Jianyu. I have already made an agreement with the master of Suan Jianyu. After all, he wants to break the rules, so he set a condition and found a Suan Jianyu. He is the 9th level disciple on the Xianjian immortal ranking. If you defeat him, you can make an exception and become a Xuanjian level disciple in advance. This kind of treatment is something that the Xuanhuan immortal sect has never had before." Wu Yu suddenly became excited. "There will be an update tonight.